quick bit of props for the Trump administration. They have border crossings for illegals down to what's essentially statistically zero. They're basically nothing compared to what was going on this time last year, which is not a bad thing. The thing that's not so great is he just got permission to deport people to Sudan, South Sudan, which is war-torn and not a great place. And these are people who actually have no ties to South Sudan. And that may happen as early as on this 4th of July. But this story is actually not about the migrants, immigrants who are coming in, coming out, being sent back and forth. Well, it is about that, but it is a scenario. There was a movie that came out a few years back that was sort of a fictional fantasy of what if all the illegals, all the Mexicans just disappeared, and it was basically showing white people having to do all the jobs they had people who were Hispanic doing, like cooking and cleaning and washing and picking fruit. Now, here's an actual study that would happen to show what would happen if all the undocumented immigrants actually were to leave California. This June study coming out from the Bay Area Council of Economic Institute and the UC Merced saying that California stands to lose about $275 billion in economic input if all undocumented immigrants just disappeared. And this is about 5% of the state's GDP and on paychecks. 9% once you include the ripple effects, including with consumer spending, what those people actually spend out in the economy. Critical sectors would be agriculture, construction, hospitality, and food services would suffer the most and the quickest. For instance, undocumented workers make up 1/3 of farm laborers and 1/4 of construction workers. Agriculture output alone would drop about 14%, construction losing about 16% of its GDP share. These workers also, believe it or not, pay taxes, the tax they receive, about $23 billion in annual tax revenue, local, state, and federal sources. This includes income taxes because even though they are not citizens of the states, they are actually paying what they can do to not get in trouble, stay apart, whatever. And if they're working towards being actual documented citizens, actually for naturalizations, they must do all these things in the process. That would go away immediately. The impact with funding for schools, healthcare, and infrastructure would be big. And it's not just for funding those folks themselves. It's all the people who are natural citizens, if you will. Small businesses would collapse to some issues where 40% owned by immigrants. Literally 4% of these businesses out there are owned by people who are undocumented. ICE raids are already causing decreased foot traffic to many of these places with rising fear and labor shortages there as well. This shows that the slowdown in spending will worsen housing and food supply issues as well. So people argue that removing undocumented workers, the bulk of them at least, could push employers to automate and hire folks more legally, go through the process of doing paperwork to get people on the right actual passes, and, maybe raise some wages for certain sectors in general because they're not there illegal. They have to pay legal people legal wages. The problem is to disrupt the system immediately and take away the millions of undocumented workers that work and live in California shows you just one actual outcome in one actual place. A place like California, the state has a GDP, has an economy that's one of the top economies of the world. California by itself is actually a pretty big economy, and they actually send more tax revenue to the U.S. than any other state in the nation by leaps and bounds. So when Donald Trump says he's going to do something against California, Californians remind him that how much tax money actually goes to those states and how the other states that he has issues with or no issues with, the red states, are dependent on California tax revenue. But the bottom line of this is the undocumented population in California is a problem, but it's a tightly woven problem in the economy. You can't just get rid of it. The absence would not just leave some jobs open. It would hollow out very entire sectors and put ripples in various public budgets across the state, which once that tax revenue is gone, would be issues across the nation.